Hello, this is Robert James Fremantle, here once again with another Dragon Age video. Firstly, we've been away a little while, and as such, there's not going to be any intros or anything like that. We're just going to jump straight in and finally, cover what happened with the Shadow Bloom. Things have got really way behind. Been doing an absolute crap ton of reading. And I've got further education things going on at the moment, and just so much to try and balance. And actually getting around to doing that, and then another campaign actually starting, and then it gets to the point of like, well, are you going to spend your time instead talking about gaming, or actually doing some gaming? And then you find yourself almost not being able to prepare to actually do gaming because you're spending so much time, you've got whatever to actually talk about it. Anyway, the Shadow Bloom, we're going to cover it now as best as I can. The memory gets sketchier the further away one gets from the event. The beautiful thing about it is, of course, that you can follow along because Martin Garner and I wrote this together. The file is available to download. You can check it out in the info bar below or wherever. I'm going to literally open the file up and use it as a sort of inspiration, so I might not necessarily be addressing you. I'll be sort of like reading the screen as well as we go. It's an RPG adventure that is centric on one main thing, and that is outdoor survival, with a usable hook that is combat and non-combat pets contracting a deadly disease that has to be cured or they'll die. Simple as that. And so there is it's useful in that sense for groups that have pets, because obviously they could do something about it. But otherwise, if I'd have, and we're they're really pet heavy anyway, because they've got a Mabari, they've got a bird, they've got a red lion, a mouse. That's 4 things. They've got Lorry. Like I say, all different types of animal. If we didn't have pets, and I wanted to run the Shadow Bloom because I fancied sort of bringing about a bit of survivalist adventure thing, then I'd probably have them meet an NPC and say, hey, you do the thing, you come along and help me out, and I'll pay you lots of money, the NPC would say, and then you can help me pay. If you save my pet, then I'll give you this much extra, and so on. Anyway, they have to journey into a deep, dark forest. You'll also notice, by the way, that the text file, which it should link you into my Google Plus because that was the easiest way of doing it, has actually been written in a manner that isn't necessarily only limiting to Dragon Age. So there aren't any Dragon Age specific intellectual property elements mentioned there, and you can see that I'm going around it with a strong suggestion of what they would be in terms of Thedas. The reason why in terms of Thedas is because obviously I ran it with my group in Dragon Age, but you could run it, I guess, in Midgard or probably in D&D or whatever. But the main idea is outdoor adventure, okay? Outdoor survival. Okay, so they were in Freeport when I left them. So it was determined they're going to have to leave Freeport right now and, get on with this, get down to it. So their pets were ailing. That's why they left. And, there came the bit at the beginning where they're trying to find out if there's any way of curing their pets. They try everything. It doesn't work. They ask House Baranti. They don't know what it is. And also, it turns out that at Redhold, this is just for our group's storyline, nothing to do with the module, their shaman is now grievously ill. In a very bad way indeed. And Karak wanted to go see him to ask advice. But of course, he's not at his best, and he doesn't know, and Karak tries to consult the books there, and so forth, to try and find anything. Him being, one of the apprentice shamans under the Redhold main shaman. And Amelia has been fetched from the training monastery, with the training with the Templars, as she is, and she is going to come along with the group, because what the group has done is they've left Gabe behind in Freeport, and Laurie plays Amelia and Gabe. Gabe wanted to be left behind because he wanted to keep an ear to the ground as to what was going on in their absence, so that they'd be clued in when and if anything happens. So they went to Redhold. They still couldn't fully find the answers. They found out that there was some sort of flower, very rare, that blooms in the darkest forests out sort of around about like the old Dales or something like that. So we're talking way off to the west. So, that's a bit of a trek. They get off on their way, and you'll notice here that in the perilous journey, I've written down... Oh, there goes my fan kicking in again. Just ignore the sod. I've written in 11 days worth of different debuff effects for failures, in case they have no shelter or things like that. So there needs to be an element on it, really, where your team knows they're going into the wilds and that you're not going to play dumb with them, because this module won't. And it's, the module it's going to be nasty if they haven't spent their money on important things like tents and, what are they going to do for food and such. It's not always just about combat. Sometimes the land itself is just as dangerous. And this adventure plays up to the very most important thing in all of travel, and that is the most dangerous element is water. It's the most precious thing because you need it more than anything, and it's the most dangerous thing because getting wet is the absolute worst thing that can happen to you, period, in outdoor survival. We went into a combat encounter, and they found out this is where the flower is, so they're going full steam. And now the thing is, they've taken an absolute crap load of food supplies with them. Don't worry if your party does that, okay? Because it's all gonna ruin on them. The bandit attack. They spotted them just in time to have passed the archers, and the idea really here was to have two different sets of bandits, one that's pelting them with fire, and the other one that's sort of drawing them into a melee fighting trap. And then the ones with fire can pelt them from behind, and obviously wouldn't be blocking line of sight because they are there firing at the rear. Obviously, if they miss, I suppose you as the GMs could come along and say, oh, well, chance of hitting one of their own guys or something at that point, or whatever rules you do, but they should at least have a crack at it. And so that was the idea, separating them. So in this, obviously, a visual medium is very important. Just even if you're just going to draw it up on paper and show them roughly, oh, there's like a line here and this is where they are. But of course, they're not supposed to know that the archer guys are in position where they are yet, because they kind of pop up at a certain specified time. Well, the group being what they are, they're just crazy fools, and they rode over these guys, tore them down. I don't want to go too much into it because I don't want to imprint too much of what our group did, because this experience has been written by us, and it's for you to find your stories within this. It's a bit different when it's your own material in that sense. Now, the next one was quite, for me, very important, and it really summarised the whole module, and that was Down Came the Rain and I wrote this bit to encapsulate the entire concept that I was going for, because I added all of these survival elements to Martin's writing and modified the combat encounters and turned them into statted encounters and created unique statted NPCs for the jobs. So it was quite nice being able to put my own stamp on it. Additionally, but this is the one that really sums it all up for me, and I'm explaining the science basically behind what is going on. So you as the GM can explain to them what is happening, the conditions that eventually will lead up to a flash flood, which is extremely dangerous. Flash floods can, pick up and carry vehicles down a road with, not even that high an amount of water. So they had to deal with this, and I determined, it was going to have to be advanced tests, and then even the person who thinks he's succeeded and got to the other side, then something nasty comes in. So they have to be ready and prepared to run for it. And you're going to see in this module, there's a lot of cunning natural law test things come in. And of course, there's a chance that some parties won't have access to that particular focus speciality. But of course, in the rules of Dragon Age, you don't have to have a focus to do the test for it. Okay, there's not like a basic and advanced skills / focuses. In this, it just gives you like +2 to having a crack at it. But later on, we've got a specific NPC who comes in when things are potentially at their worst, who can offer to help the group if they will help the NPC. And this particular NPC, Morven, has the survival natural law skills. That's what he's all about. Okay, so he would make the whole thing easier for the group if they aren't bad to him, really. They're wet. They're in the water. This is the thing that ruins their food. They've got to try and push on through it. And, I was really, really proud of this one. I came up with a minus and plus modifier bullet points table that showed that, being in heavy leather is a -1 to rolls trying to get through this water, all the way through to a player character wearing heavy plate being -5 to their rolls, but also allowing might and stamina and dex initiative to add +1s back in the favour. So yes, armour might be against you, but you might be a big strapping lad, so that goes back again for you. So yeah, the armour encompasses -5 to you, but you're a big guy with strength, might, and constitution, stamina. So that's only -3, not -5. So, I mean, in those situations. And of course, one big strapping person is Amelia, who was very, very good at getting through the water. But in our party, a couple of them did struggle. Ashard struggled to get through the water, and I think Tanador was having problems too. And the others sort of just about made it. So yeah, the armour wasn't a problem to Amelia at all. So I know that it's doable for those people with armour. Anyway, they get to the other side, and now they're wet. So the next one's called Getting Dry. And in this, really, I've just broken down the science behind what will happen if they don't try to warm up, and you should punish them if they don't. You need to warn them beforehand that you are going to run something realistic, or perhaps it's realistic because you are still rolling dice, aren't you? It's still an abstraction of a world, isn't it? But with an attempt at a more realistic focus than most adventures will normally offer. And so you're only mentioning it as a friendly warning so that they don't feel surprised by the fact. And I think it's nice to let them really feel what it's like to try and live outside, because a lot of nasty things can happen, and they can go against you and give you debuffs effectively if we're converting those into game terms. But yeah, basically, hypothermia is your biggest enemy in a situation like that. In the middle of nowhere, just being caught by a flash flood, you happen to survive the flash flood, if you do. Now you've got to worry about hypothermia. What are you going to do? So we've explained the different stages of that. And then we get them on to actually trying to start compiling the Shadow Bloom. And again, it's the Cunning Natural Law test. And again, they're still on their own, but that's about to be remedied soon. So we've got a load of other things. How are they going to survive now? All of their rations have been ruined. So are they going to try and catch fish, for example? And there's a lot of information gone into this, like, which direction are the fish facing? Is it important? Well, yes, it is. If you're going to try and catch them without a fishing rod, and you're going to attempt to go into the stream and spear them, then yes, it's very important, because they can get spooked if they're facing the right way and be off. And even the specific, what would be realistic elements, like, are you going to try and fire an arrow at them? Are you an archer? Well, does the arrow have fletching on it? I bet it probably does. So it's not actually made for fishing, and the flight part is actually going to it's going to divert the course of the shot, make it much, much harder. And then, of course, you've got another problem, for example, with water refraction, because in a stream, if you were looking at fish and you go to stab them like that, you'll be stabbing nothing, because they aren't necessarily where you think they are. We've got things like them having a chance to do a natural law test to realise that the spruces that are nearby, which is like Christmas tree stuff, you can get some of the spruce and heat it up and make a tea out of it, which will be good vitamin C, which is in brackets, of course. It's not something the characters would know. Boiled in water, and it refreshes your spirits. And we say here that in this module that obviously morale is a very important thing to survival like this. They're worried, they're stressed, their pets are in danger, or their livelihood's in danger, or their lives are in danger. Some of the party might well be sick from what they are now suffering. So you have to take into account what their willpower state is at, and are you going to start modifying it on them? What are their spirits at? It's one thing for the player to say, "Oh, my guy's fine," right? But that's easy to just say that, isn't it? That's why those stats are there, to help you better portray your guy, because you don't really know what it feels like to be him. You try and play him, and you might really get a handle on him, a great handle on him at some times, but you can't appreciate the stress and the pain of being an adventurer in a world like that, because at the end of the day you get to close the book and do something else when the game's over, and your poor character doesn't. So that's his life. It's pretty bad. So willpower, the morale of the group is very, very important. And if they don't do things like this to keep their spirits up, if they don't have a wash, for example, when they see a street, I know it's getting wet, but it's an important thing. If they don't freshen up, if they don't find food sources, their willpower is going to decrease and decrease, and that could start having adverse effects on them. And as the GM, you could quite easily turn around and say something like that okay, your willpower is reduced by such and such until you find a source of food or drink, something with at least some flavour to it, or what have you, until it gets so desperate that even something without flavour to it, is just as good as something with flavour, and so on. And we've made it so bad for them that I've put an encounter in here called A is for Aardvark, where we can have them try and eat ants if they so wish. And we've put tests in place again for them to potentially realise they can do it. People have said before that it's nice for players to use their own knowledge of, for instance, things like survival or whatever elements to make their character more fulfilled and believable and knowledgeable and skilled or what have you. But say if the problem is if you do that, are you saying that every one of your characters are going to do that? Well, probably not, and therefore some characters are not going to, because that's kind of the idea of roleplay, that you're actually not always trying to be yourself, you're trying to be someone else. I would have thought, wouldn't you? And therefore your character wouldn't always necessarily know the types of things you know. They wouldn't necessarily be the same kind of thinker as you are. And so I think it's very good to come along to some of the non-survival people who happen to roll really well for the survival checks and have a little bit of something noted down on the old post-it here or whatever you do, and hand it discreetly to them so that they then read it and it says, I can eat the larvae. Yeah, that's actually, and it's up to you. You realise you can do that. They look like small grains of rice. You could try digging them out, and there's a method, of how to do it. And so then the character who the group could maybe knows nothing about adventure, or the player I should say, could turn around and start like coming out with this information about ants and their nests and say, I heard about this somewhere, and it's not you, the GM, it's the player that's doing it, and that's really ace. You're empowering your players, and you just hope in return that they're going to energise their GM back so that you can surge forward with the next cool thing. And we've got a really good little idea in place for how to actually get the ants to capture the larva for you. And that one I have to give credit to Bear Grylls for. Brilliant man, Bear Grylls. Huge fan. And that's totally down to him. It's a great survival trick. So if there's ever ants around you, watch out, because I'm coming for you. And then we've got the wolf encounter. Now, how do you meet the wolves? I mean, I just had my guys, they could smell like rotting flesh, and they were going through the forest, and they disturbed some wolves, very big wolves, that were eating of like a stag or elk or something like that. Who knows what it was anymore now. And the wolves were like, okay, that's our kill, so we're going to kill you right now. And now, anyway, the wolves attack. Now you have to remember, in this scenario, right, the wolves are very numerous in number. They are going to double the party's size, but please don't forget the fact that when they're at half strength left of number, the chances are they're gonna beat it. So yes, they have to deal with an overwhelming amount of attackers, but only up to a point. If they can get some of them killed quick enough, they can end the fight. So it needs to be one of those fights that looks really, really bad and looks worse than it actually is. Because sometimes the important thing, I think, is to actually affect the morale of the party and, make them believe, okay, we're screwed. We don't have a chance. Not a chance in hell. And the other thing that makes these wolves really lethal, and I'm going to draw attention to it, if you take a look, yeah, they've got the raking claws thing that most wolves have, but I've given them something else called Kill to Eat, right? And you can see under their favourite stunts that Knock Prone and Skirmish are very much there. So Kill to Eat is, can Skirmish prone targets twice the normal distance? Now, if you're like me and you're having the heal range be in an equivalence to the spell power, that's going to be very lethal, having these prone targets being skirmished twice the distance because they're being pulled out of heal radius. And of course, away from the radius of sort of certain people with protector abilities, or away from taking enemies away from melee people who would like to actually get a threat on them and get them into combat within a turn or whatever, rather than have to shout across at them or whatever. And of course, they won't even get the stunt to go off if they don't attack them. So, I mean, yeah, it's pretty bad, isn't it? That could potentially kill a group. It's quite nasty. So again, as the GM, you mustn't forget the fact that they've got to bugger off when they're at least half strength. And if the group starts getting down, you might be tempted to try and tell them, oh, don't worry guys, you only have to kill 2 more and they'll do a run for it. But, I guarantee you won't feel better after. Because, a lot of the danger of the thing, because they'll have hope suddenly, and a lot of the danger of it and the enjoyment for you will be gone. Their dampened spirits will just be their lack of faith in you as a GM, really, and lack of faith in themselves to come up with advantageous initial positioning and continued positioning. And then we've got a great bear in the thing. And you have to take into account, remember, that these are optional encounters. The guys maybe caught a fish earlier. Did they cook it? What did they do with the fish after cooking it? What did they do with the remains? Did they bury the remains? Bears have quite a good sense of smell. If a bear comes near the camp and they've just left a fish out, the bear will most likely come into the camp to explore. They've got a bear in their camp, it happens. You should maybe try and elevate the corpse of the fish. Stick it in like a little baggy type thing, a shirt or something, and tie it on some string and hoist it up a tree. Just anything like that, just to keep it up out of the scent range for the bear. Then we've got a particularly hard encounter. And as I said before, I'm a great believer in hard encounters for the group. Because why not? Consider this. You aren't here to just hold their hands and baby them along, because you could all play at Rugrats if you wanted to do that. And that's my personal opinion. An RPG should be bloody deadly. It should really have the threat of lethality to it, or else the players won't truly enjoy what they're doing. That, or they're just very young and they're big, very bad sports if they fail. This next one, though, which is why I'm saying the lethality element really comes into play. The forest comes alive. Optional encounter, but I really would recommend you include it. Just for the sheer malicious glee that can be gained for you. And it's hard, because they have to fight these wild Sylvans, okay? And they don't mess about. They're really powerful. They're strength 9 with a claws focus. They're plus 11 to attack. Their damage is 2d6 plus 9. They can do a multiple AoE stomp. They can do a root grab, putting a damage over time on several different guys. And if your mage doesn't have fire spells like our one didn't, then you got to get quite creative, of course. And of course they've got an armor rating of 5 just to make that worse. And so what's worse than having to fight one of them, which was lethal to the group when they met it before, some levels ago? His name was. Well, one for each of the party, that's what. Now, This was Martin's idea. And when I first read it, I thought, whoa, that doesn't sound too balanced, does it? That sounds really hard. Wow. And then I thought of two things. And I thought, stop doing that. Stop thinking like that, Rob. Right, number one, okay, our group are crazy. They complete problems in shockingly brilliant ways that you could never have initially imagined. Don't underestimate them. They're great. And number two, it doesn't need to be balanced. See, I remember first I was thinking of getting this out there and getting it play tested, but then I realised, I thought, do you know what? That kind of goes against the spirit of the game. I mean, I've run it with my group now, and they've got through to the end of the adventure, and you'll find out what happened towards the end of this video, and what the results of it were. But, I mean, I've tested it with them, and they're maybe not the ideal group, because they're all crazy buggers. Seriously, I mean, they really are. They'll tell you themselves that they're a bunch of cranks. The idea of fighting all these Sylvan, I for a moment there almost forgot the most important thing, which I mention in the file here. And that is, run away. Retreat. Flee. And I say in there, if they want to try and run away, this is how they could do it. And try and sort of like leave that out there. And if they don't run away, and they're getting slaughtered to the man, because these things are powerful, and they would be powerful, well, that's their fault, isn't it? They can't point at you, the GM, and say, oh no, that was too powerful, this is shit. If they say that, show them this bit of the video here. And show them me saying, you could have run away. You're trying to portray something in a world. What, you think you're He-Man? You think you're the best in the world, do you? Do you think you're the master of the universe? Is that what you think you are? You think that there's things out there that can't best even the likes of you? Well, I think not. I mean, this isn't made for top-level characters, after all. Maybe like middling at this point, or towards middling. And, I mean, giant tree men smacking you with 2d6 plus 9 damage. That's some serious shit, man. If you need to, run. And did my group? They killed them all. They killed all those Sylvan. They did it. Karak's a really good dedicated healer anyway. They had Amelia there to tank for them. So, with that sort of tank and healer combination, they had Rock in there, which, of course, I know I hate to sound meta-gamey there and computer-gamey there, but we are keeping true to the source as well, because Dragon Age is a computer game, and Dragon Age has a tank who happens to be the Templar specialisation. Alistair, anyone? Just like Amelia's the Templar, and of course the healers are the mages. If they spec healing spells, which R1 did, which means he's going to be healing. So, and he's a spirit healer. So that might have helped a bit. Still, they got through it. And I mean, it came close, and sometimes people go down. And it was nice to see them going down. And like Karak sometimes go down in these fights, and someone have to run over and try and pick him back up and shove a flask of potion down his throat. And then I'm getting him to roll to check if he chokes on it in his dying state. Because yes, I'm that mean. Yeah. But of course, and I know that they won't choke and die, and I know that they will succeed. They are crazy. I gave them this encounter thinking, haha, this is a trap. They're going to be foolhardy and not run. They can do silly things sometimes. This is beyond them. I thought, oh, maybe one of them will be sensible and run. But no, they go one step further and kill everything, don't they? On to the next part. This is where they have a chance to meet Morvan. Now, this is the hunter guy with his dog. He's out in the forest. Morvan's here trying to heal his dog. They'd met him previously. They met him at the Autumn Falls at the archery contest, and so they've run into him here. And the fact that his dog is ill, and he's very, very close to his dog, is really important to him. And we had someone in our party whose pet is very important to them, because we've got Tanador, who's gone with the warrior ranger specific ability, which is kind of like a D&D hack that we've brought in. And I'll try and cover that at some point. But basically, it lets a warrior have access to some roguey elements and let them actually have a pet, but they have to wear like a certain lighter armor, and they have to specialize a certain way to get that. Tanador has, and the thing is, he's always tried playing his character that way, even before we gave him this thing that gave him the advantage of, and he pays off if you're wearing sort of like mail armor or whatever it was, because he wasn't doing it before, just on the principle that he should be getting something for it, and he wasn't getting anything actually for it. He just said, "Oh well, the only fact is you don't get something minus, slowing you down," but he felt that he should be a bit more agile as a result of it and whatever. So in this, he actually gets to make that choice really mean something, and it almost feels like it was really made for him. And I actually approached him with the specialization and said, "Look, do you want to do this as your specialization? Because to me, it feels like your character. Tell me what you think." And he was in absolute agreement. So yes, they get a chance to get their foot spiked from a trap that Morven has set out. And well, they can meet him in one of lots of different ways. He can either overhear them get caught on the trap, or they can end up wandering into the camp and catching him unawares, which is, doesn't often happen with him, but of course he's very distraught at the moment because he thinks he's about to lose his dog. And important thing to say here about Morven is it's actually Martin himself. So you actually get to see one of the writers of this in the RPG. So that's always cool, right? He's put himself into the world and made this is his character. His initial conception for this was actually as a result of him having a bit of a near miss with his dog and at the vet and stuff. So it made him realise the value of his own pet, and tapped into that feeling. And you really can. That's one thing that is inside this is there's a lot of feeling there accessible for the pets. So they aren't just like a combat pet that you just go sick 'em boy. That they actually might mean something to you, especially so if they were a Mabari, if you're playing in the Dragon Age universe, because obviously they're as intelligent as a person, aren't they? So this is an important thing. We put a circumstantial encounter in there for if the party choose to attack Morvan, or if he is forced to attack them for some reason. If they are fighting Morvan, things have got pretty bad at this point. I'd love to know, what your party ends up doing, and if they how they deal with Morven, and how they deal with certain elements in the story, and how they deal with a lot of the survival elements, and did any of them embrace it and say, it was nice to be able to explore these areas within an RPG. That's the kind of comments you should also come back and leave as feedback on this. That would be great to see you come back and tell me how it ran. Anyway, they decide they're going to pool their resources. He's going to now supply his cunning natural law ability. They're going to keep trying to collect the Shadow Bloom. The amount of Shadow Bloom needed has to be determined by you, really. I mean, don't forget that you can really alter this stuff one way or the other. It doesn't just have to be what's written on the page. If you're GMing for your wife, right, and she particularly loves her pet, and she will just give you so much stick if there's a chance of the pet actually dying, then it's your prerogative if you want to make the adventure less lethal in some way. You don't have to take it as the written word, but the written word is there for the sadistic way that I like to run it, and that is to say that everything has consequences, good things and bad things, and that sometimes it's a bit of a grey dividing line between them, and the occurrences sometimes bad creates yet more bad, and good creates yet more good. But sometimes you can do good when you're trying to do bad, and vice versa. And so, some people, that run it in the very lethal way might lose pets. And the group, at this point, they'd lost their mouse. He died very quickly. And of course, it's kind of a damage over time thing to the pets that's unhealable. And they'd lost the hawk, Karat's hawk. So, that was... They still had the Mabari, but and Morvan's dog was still alive. But anyway, they keep going, keep trying to find as much of this stuff as possible. You don't want them just keep doing a roll fest. So the way I did it was, look, you guys, you don't want to keep rolling yet, because every time you roll, I'm calling that another day spent, so hang on here guys, because your pets are going to die on you. And you can do what I did and sort of have like a -1 daily, or you can change that, alter that to have the pets lose health to some other less lethal extent if you so wished. It's up to you. And the thing that comes at the very end is very nasty indeed, and if you think that is too cruel, then you can skip that. But you'll see what I mean on that one anyway, as in right at the very end. So then we've got another one in here called From on High. There's a tree that's propped up, and they ought to really avoid it. They should have the sense to avoid it, and if they don't have the sense to avoid it, it's going to fall down, it could pin someone, and then they are going to have to try and get out. And people can try and aid and help them get out. And, in a lot of these things, I've taken to people helping, not just like someone having the might focus and adding +1 to a them helping to lift it thing, but also like an additional +1 if they have a value of 6 or more. Because to me, 6 is kind of like that boundary line, because they've made a really major investment of 2 skills at that point to just get the 1. So that's pretty impressive. So if they had like strength 6, at that point I start calling that a +1 on some things. I play it really loose and by feel, but trying to lift this tree off someone, that could burn health out of them. In this case, it's for fatigue reasons, but health, remember, again, isn't just to do with injury. It's how tired you are. That's fatigue, because it's the point at which you're more likely to incur a fatal injury, hence 0. Then we've got the forest comes alive again. If your parties run away from them, which mine didn't, this is a great time to make them all groan, because the things come back. And now, again, the same thing applies. If they are too silly to run away this time, well, screw them. Just, these are powerful foes. They're going to have to leg it from them, though. But yeah, it's another chance to get a load more damage done to them. Freak them the hell out and make them realise, this forest is so oppressive. This is not a place that I'm enjoying being in. Everything's trying to kill us, and the whole place is dangerous. And that's the feeling you really want to be giving them there. They did get pinned by the tree, one of them, and they lifted it fine. You know, there's a bit of health loss, but really they can shake those things off because they can do the 5-minute breathers. But then towards the end, they'd kind of worked out mechanically what was going on. So this is a really integral point in which you as the GM can really come in and say, okay, you know what, I'm going to personalise this bit, because maybe I think it could work better this way or whatever. And, you know, that's absolutely fine to do. And you're not wrong to do it, you know, and I'm not wrong to have written it this way. Because, and Martin wrong to have written his original draft his way. And, you know, obviously it's an amalgam of what he writes and then I write and plods them together, and then you get this. Because we've got them trying to make a dose with a test. So there's a chance that even mixing the dosage could go wrong. So you could decide on elements of success, perhaps. You could say, well, the distilling process, which eventually only ends up giving them perhaps one dose to be able to save one animal, because they have to make the choice. You know, are they going to try giving a lesser dose of that smaller dose out to all the remaining animals, in this case the 2 dogs, or are they going to give it to one and almost definitely guarantee saving that one? This is the point that's really, really important for Morven and his dog, because he could come back as a reoccurring character. And his dog is everything to him, and if he loses his dog, I mean, it is explained in the file, if he loses her, he will go just nuts. The party had pooled their resources with him, and they didn't, because obviously the brews come out and they don't have a proper alchemical lab to mix it in, they don't have time to get it done. Oh, and by the way, our party, just to tell you, they'd actually left Blacktail behind because he incurred some really bad injuries, and having incurred them back in Freeport, he was pretty badly torn open, and, you know, ribs were showing, and flesh and muscle was ripped. So they left him back at Redhold. So they were still going to have to get back to him, you know, while he is ailing or whatever. And they were even like keeping track of it on paper, what health he should be and such, for me. Just automatically doing it, so because they're, you know, quite clever people. And a lesser dose has been created. They say, look, I'll tell you what, we need to keep some for our pet, of course. How about we just try sharing the dose? And, you know, he wasn't good with it, but, you know, it wasn't as bad as them saying, you know, screw you at this point, you know, pushing him down and saying, look, we outnumber you, we're keeping the whole dose, screw your dog. They did try at this point. An attempt was made to share, and the results, she didn't make it. She needed the full dose, and out there in the forest there was nothing more that could be done for her. He was distraught, broken, and they were very, very nice to him, very understanding and apologetic, and tried explaining, you know, giving their condolences and trying to make sure he's going to be all right and stuff. So it was, they were being genuine with him, so there is that. But now Morven's pretty broken, and how he's going to feel about this, well, I need to talk to Martin, really, because obviously the party, yes, he's ended up losing his dog, but it isn't necessarily straightforward, because they didn't do it purposely. They just tried making the best of a bad thing, and in the end, you know, the split there, he got unlucky. So they left him there in the forest because he wanted to remain. And they rushed back to try and get to Blacktail, their Mabari that they've took on from an earlier adventure. And this is the really terrible bit. Because, again, this has happened to Morvan now. When they arrived back at Redhold, the Mabari was already fixed. As good as new. Fully healed up. Almost weirdly so. And also, on their return, the shaman has been announced as dead. He's passed. So the council determined that Karak's going to become the new shaman of Redhold. What's going on? What wheels are turning? What machinations are behind the scenes about to come into play next? We'll find out at the next one, but that's kind of a rough idea of how the Shadow Bloom went down, and really, run it for yourself and let me know. Check out the appendix guides as well, but they are just that, just guides, and just treat them just as a guide, not as rules. I really hope you enjoy yourself. We worked hard on producing this for you, and I really do hope it shows. And until next time, I'll see you at the table.